Welcome to the 37th edition of Podcasters. Today with Brian Junker Latocha. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Doran. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. Please introduce yourself. Well, we know your name, but what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Brian Junker Latocha, or Junker Latocha. I work at a company called VUI.agency, and we do customer experience for voicebots and chatbots. But I come from a background originally from natural language understanding. Had a kind of varied resume where I started back, as you can see here, in music, and then eventually landed in, after several steps, in linguistics, and did computational linguistics, did some natural language understanding for a few years, among others at a telecom project with Deutsche Telekom, and now have made the jump from the development side into the talking side of things, into the sales team, and happy to be talking to a lot of different people about voicebots and chatbots, like you, Doran.
And why do you find it so interesting? What made you love this territory? Because everybody has a story, and somewhere you fell in love with conversational AI, be it voice or text, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think first I fell in love with linguistics, and then I fell in love with. Then I got to know the programming side of things, and just started to see all of the statistical side of language, maybe. And there's so many different combinations that are possible with natural language. I think it's a really cool canvas to apply programming to and statistics to. I mean, this is kind of circuitous answer to your question, but in university we had my program was called Linguistic and Literary Computing. It was in Darmstadt. So we had some things about, like, can you identify a Shakespeare work as being from Shakespeare by his commas and his punctuation and his stylometric distribution of how he used his words, and making the transition into voice and chatbots. It's just the most natural way to speak. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people have given this answer on your show before, but I was talking to someone recently about computers talking to one another, and the possibility of, okay, you have APIs with computers used to talk to each other, and we put these APIs into our voice bots and chatbots so they actually have some power behind them and can do some stuff. But I need to read into this myself, but it was an article about computers talking to each other through natural language, because to find out, like, all of the different functions of the API and what, just as the most common denominator. And I think, ending my long commentary, language is the most common denominator for describing our world, and that's why I think it's very useful in voice bots.
That's interesting. And then, last year, ChatGPT opened up.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of other LLMs came. Because you just said something about recognizing text, for instance, from Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And now you can ask a chatbot to write a text in the style of Shakespeare. So how does that resonate with you? Because you must have been amazed, like, okay, it's like, here's this software that can actually analyze if it is Shakespeare, and then reproduce a totally different text in Shakespearean, give them the Shakespeareans.
Yeah, I guess it's just a logical continuation of the same thought. As soon as you've really understood how to do something well, I mean, I guess all the artists also, they learned their trade studying the masters, and then they became their own masters. But it's really fascinating to see what the machine understands and see it realized in I play in a folk music band. A friend of mine, he said, told ChatGPT to give him a folk song about a dog and a fiddle and a pickup truck, and give him 4 verses, and it came back in this rhyming 4 verses. We could have put the banjo and the fiddle right onto that.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow.
And now back to voice, because you are specialized in voice, and I actually haven't had many people around here or in the podcast who know their way around voice. We had some people, but most people are very experienced in text-based chatbots.
Mm-hmm.
Why are voice-based chatbots so important?
Why are voice-based so important? I think the easy answer is because there's a lot of voice-based communication going on out there, and a lot of it is in need of some extra efficiency.
Could you give an example?
Yeah. So one area that I have to do with a lot right now, because like I said, I've gone into this sales role, and as a company, we're very active with the call center organizations, the call center Verband of Germany, and there's some other call center club, CC club. I think voice is a really cool use case, especially in the customer service sphere, because it touches everybody. It's not like back in the days of Alexa where the nerds are on there and okay, it's spreading to the wider population, but you still don't reach everybody. If you voiceify, if you bring the technology to this kind of it's like a pop, it's just like a very widespread phenomenon, and it's great to see the technology reaching into all the strata of society. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does answer the question.
Okay.
But what I see, for instance, in Holland or some other countries, we rarely see serious voice bots. Yeah, voice response units, and they're very annoying because half of the time they don't understand you. So how do you explain the difference that in some countries everybody loves voice bots, and in some other countries, European countries, they're not being used, or almost not being used?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I don't know if there's a country where we would say everyone loves voice bots. But I think it touches on the most important part of implementing good voice bots, and that's to really know when to not implement voice bots. Because there are so many cases where someone calls on the telephone that they want to speak to a human. They want to have a consultation that just goes a little bit deeper. I think it's something we also focus on, but to me, it's kind of like the reason why I went into this more communicative role and went into the sales. It's nice to see. Yes, you can build a bot with all these. There's tons of great technologies out there. And actually, just as a side note, before this podcast, when I was Googling to figure out what we might use as an example, just Googling the word chatbot and voice bot. There's so many providers out there, and you get so few actually examples of bots when you're Googling these type of things. And so many providers. And my point is that you just really need to make sure the CX, the UX is represented when you're building this bot, and not just bringing in the technological focus. And I think I've beaten around the bush so much that I've missed your original question, but feel free to place it again if you want.
The original question was that why do we see these differences? Is there an explanation? Could it be cultural or...
The differences, yeah.
Because in Holland, I know in the beginning of this podcast, I had a French lady on the podcast, and in France, she explained me they do a lot with voice, actually more than with text-based chatbots.
Yeah.
Because that's what people do or did, pick up the phone. So they adapted to the way people are used to handling things. In Holland, for instance, we hardly see any voice bots, serious voice bots.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out if this is a cultural thing or just could be fluke where the companies that actually do consulting or implementations of chatbots have the experience with either voice or text. So, when you have a nail or when you have a hammer, everything is a nail. You know what I mean? So whenever there's a need for a bot, it's always a voice bot because that's what we know how to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, how do you see it when we're looking at chatbots and voice bots? What's your impression about chatbots in Europe, for example? Do you see it differently there? I'm just trying to understand the question a little bit better.
I see in different countries, I see different applications. Like, for instance, France, they apparently they do more voice bots. In Holland, we hardly see them. I understand in Germany you do more of it, a lot more of it. In Italy they do voice bots. So there are differences, and I'm not sure if it's cultural, practical, or from an historical perspective, that this is the way we did things. So we use the technology that sort of fits in what we know how to do as a consumer, in order to get engagement. I don't have the answer. I haven't found any research that helps me on that. I just notice it.
Yeah, but do you notice it that, like, the countries where you said you perceive they have more voice bot usage, do you perceive that going hand in hand with the chatbot usage, or do you see them diverging in different countries?
Well, what I know, for instance, from friends, that they're used to picking up the phone for everything, so they, in order to reduce, from a call center perspective, reduce the amount of calls or the amount of agents you need, and give them a great experience, they invest in voice bots. Inbound and outbound, by the way. That's because I think that's from an historical perspective, because they are used to pick up the phone and arrange their things by phone. Yeah. And in Holland we do a lot in writing. A lot of things go via email. So it might be the reason that we're moving into text-based bots.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
But I don't have the official answer.
Data.
There is no hard data.
But so I don't have the hard data either. But at least in Germany, to judge from what I've heard, speaking with people from the call center industry and contact center, is that telephone communication is on the rise. People, you would think, okay, there's so many we have a great app and we've got the most modern UX on our website and everything, and that's going to deflect people away from calling on the telephone. But from what I've heard from people in Germany is that it's going up, and at the same time, their resources in the personnel department are going down. You have the lack of skilled workers, and I don't know, maybe just to say my personal preference, I think the great thing about a phone call, whether it's with a voice bot or a human, is you just call and it's done when you're done. It's a mental check on the to-do box, whereas email takes it back and forth a little bit. Even a chatbot sometimes, I mean, it goes in the same direction, but a call is just, you have to wait through the waiting line. That's annoying. Ideally, you put a bot instead. But it's a quick resolution. I think that's the biggest pull. But
that's suggestive, but a voice bot, isn't it generally harder to make than a text-based bot, where if people don't pronounce the words properly, or speak too soft, or have a complicated accent, you hear a lot of complaints, and that's why there's also a lot of models, language models to help with that. How do you view that?
Yeah, I think voice is more complicated for two reasons. For one, what you said, definitely, especially in countries like Switzerland, for example, with a huge dialectal range of languages and pronunciations. But I think the other thing is, when people write things down, in linguistics you call this register. You have a written register and a spoken register. And even if you're writing a SMS or a WhatsApp or whatever, you have to kind of formulate your thoughts in advance. On the telephone, you don't necessarily have to do that, and it can make things a lot more unpredictable. You can compare it to voice messages and a text message on WhatsApp. I'm kind of an enemy of voice messages sometimes, just because people don't necessarily think in advance what they actually want to say, and that makes it more difficult for the bot also to understand. If we're talking about someone who's just kind of more stream of consciousness than another, it makes building a model a lot more complicated.
So how do you go about designing a voice bot? Because I presume it's different than designing a text-based bot.
Mm-hmm. There are definitely a lot of parallels, and it also definitely depends upon what you are intending to do with your voice bot.
Let's assume you would design a voice bot where someone has a question, and that question leads to an administrative process being handled, like a change of address, or something really simple. But there is engagement. Yeah, we go back and forth, and then the conclusion is, okay, the address needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And then basically there's a back-end process somewhere. How would you go about designing that?
How would you go about designing it? Usually we start with a persona, both of the user and of the bot. Okay, you've probably heard this many times.
But not for voice.
Not for voice? Okay, yeah.
I've heard it
But
for text.
There's definitely a lot of similar topics. What are the first steps when you're going out to design your voice bot versus a text chat bot? Obviously, the audio component comes in there, and now we've got the ability to do these like neural voices, have custom voices. Maybe it's an agent from your call center, or it's even a famous person that you've licensed their voice to represent your brand. You have that aspect. Also, one thing that I like to say is that with voice, I think it's a higher bar. I think, and I think it's a higher bar because people are used to pressing 0 on a telephone, and they're used to saying, "Oh, I know this old IVR. All you have to do is say agent enough times, and it'll transfer me to the agent." Or you press whatever button. You really have to make it fun, or at least enough engaging enough that people say, "You know what? Actually, I'm going to try this bot, and I'm going to try and do my address change in the automated way," because they always, unless you're the kind of person who excludes the possibility of going to an agent, usually you can escalate to an agent. But it's really kind of a psychological challenge to provide transparency about, yes, you can escalate to an agent, but this bot will maybe cut you through the waiting line. What are your motivations for using the bot? It's going to save you time. It's also going to make things easier. And the tonality of the bot is even more important. I mean, okay, you don't really have tonality in the audio sense on a text chat bot, of course. Sure, the style of the dialogue is also very important. But I think the hang-up rate issue and zeroing out is kind of a game differentiator on voice.
And how do you start building, and how do you test that? Because if you have text, if it's structured, then you have a predictable answer. If you use an LLM or other models, it becomes a little bit less predictable. But you can still, if it's properly trained, you should still be able to predict what the answer could or should be.
Yeah.
And how do you do that in voice? Does it use the same models behind it, but then translate it to voice, or what happens?
Yeah, I would say it's basically an analog to the same. But obviously, we're not just testing strings, text inputs. We're testing text inputs from a male voice, from a female voice, from a younger, older, with accent, no accent, international person, etc. You have to have a multi-pronged approach. You have to be testing your text understanding, because that's the what's
the inputs.
Everything's
basically
getting translated into text, right? So. But you definitely have to do audio testing as well. So you need basically a double source of truth. You need annotators that are going through and confirming your transcription is good, and retraining the transcription, giving updates when things are commonly misunderstood, especially for company terms. Your insurance company has a particular product called this and that. So you have to have twice the effort. You need to test your text and test your audio.
If you say twice the effort, does that mean twice the cost? And I'm by the way, my focus is not on cost. Eventually, the focus is on revenue.
Yeah.
So it ends up in a business case, but I'm trying to understand.
Okay. I think it depends how you're doing it. So most companies who are going to implement a voice bot, they're going to work with a partner who does speech to text, a partner who probably also helps them out with natural language understanding. Looking at it from the business perspective, I think especially also for companies that don't have the resources to implement their entire self-made project, it just makes a lot of sense to work with someone who's kind of outsourced. So when you ask about, is it like double cost to take care of the audio testing and the text testing, it's a bigger size of the project, and it's always going to be more expensive. But I guess just to kind of give a business recommendation, I would say it's always great to go with a partner, especially in the beginning, to just kind of get things up and running. And I'm not going to drop all these sorts of names here, but yeah, I think it definitely raises the complexity.
And that's one part. That's when you're building it and testing it to go live.
Yeah.
But then comes the part where you have it and you need to keep it up and running and keep it up to date.
Yeah.
Does that increased cost also work in the maintenance phase, or is that sort of levels out and sort of the same as a chatbot? Or you have a team that does it?
I would say it sort of levels out. I think it's kind of like one of these, I forget what they're called.
Hockey stick.
Sorry?
The hockey stick.
Hockey stick, thank you. So at
Actually,
the beginning,
the hockey stick is up.
Okay,
That's,
well, anyway, the hockey stick
exponential.
down. Hockey stick down, yeah.
Okay.
That's a very, I haven't heard that term, but that's exactly the way it works with the text-based and the voice-based. At the beginning, you're kind of making hypotheses and assumptions, especially when you're talking about the language model, the natural language understanding behind it. In the beginning, you're seeing all sorts of surprises. Oh, we didn't realize that they're going to say this in that way, shape, or form, or we didn't ever think they're going to pronounce this in such a way. And those surprises always happen. You're always going to get more and more surprises, but you're not going to get more and more. You're going to get less and less. And the more you learn the way your customers are speaking, because it's something companies don't usually statistify, if that's a word. They don't usually run all sorts of, it's not a necessary statistic for the call agents or anything. And even there's very few companies, or at least it's my impression in the call center industry, that it's not as many companies as you would hope or expect that are running big statistics on their transcript databases, for example. Obviously, there's also data protection questions involved here.
How so?
But, well, I think it depends on your industry, but just like thinking about banking customers or health customers, and thinking about big databases of transcripts in general, you're going to have to clean them of personal data. Someone always is going to say your telephone number or say something maybe that you wouldn't need to anonymize.
That makes sense. And what if a company has a call center and has had it for years, records all the calls?
Yeah.
Would you be able to use those calls as training data or training streams for the voicebot?
Yeah. In fact, I think that's the best way to start is if you have this pool of data, transcripts, ideally,
you mean recordings or literally text?
Recordings. Okay, so if you have recordings, you can get the transcripts with a speech to text tool. And if you have the text, then you can do all sorts of statistics on the text. You can do more complicated things and do kind of maybe topic modelings. And the point is, you need to get a feel for what are your main requests from your users. And a lot of companies already have statistics on this, but I've spoken to several that said, well, yeah, our agents have a drop-down menu and you can say A, B, C, D, or F, or G, but you can guess which option is the most frequent. It's actually A, because it's the easiest one to press on the drop-down menu. So a lot of times...
So it's convenience for the call center agent.
Convenience for the agent. So yeah, natural language processing is a great potential to get some better insights into your user speech formulations and also just what they want in general. But you can put that directly into your voicebot training for sure.
You just said something really important, which I realized that happens in a lot of company, that if agents can put in a reason why someone called, and they choose the one on top because that's the easiest.
Yeah.
Literally, they probably don't care what the reason was as long as they get that off their plate.
Sometimes.
That means that input data is worthless. So anything they record in Salesforce or one of the other programs, it is it's not useful for designing your bot because you can't trust the data. And the actual truth lies in the transcripts of the actual conversations. This is really interesting.
Yeah, I think the truth definitely lies in the transcripts. And if you have access to it, the truth also lies in the agents themselves, because for one, they have a great gut feeling. They could probably tell you right away what the top 10 cases are. But they also, this kind of diverges a little bit, but they know the tonality that their customers want. They also, most companies have like a, quality management guidelines as to how we're speaking at, I don't know, Zurich Insurance or Commerzbank. How are we speaking to our customers and in what tone of voice?
The voice of the brand, basically.
The voice of the brand, exactly.
So that's the same as we do in text. We want to have the voice of the brand in there, and very few companies actually succeed.
Yeah, and oftentimes you come in from the voice bot or even chatbot perspective, and you're talking about the voice of the brand, and it's interesting because sometimes it's also setting in motion something that affects the agents as well. But in any case, the agents are a great source of customer expertise that you shouldn't neglect.
So if you look at the voice bots you've seen around in the market, and even the text-based bots, why do so many, this is my opinion, right? But why do so many companies miss the mark on the voice of the brand? They really focus on the conversation. They get it technical right, and there's very few comments we can give on that. But if you then zoom out and look at the actual customer experience you get, and one of the examples I use over and over is Virgin Atlantic. We tested it, that chatbot, and if you talk to me about Virgin Atlantic, it's an adventurous brand. It's a little ballsy. It's fun, it's entertaining, etc., etc. So I would expect an experience in the chatbot which is similar to the image I have in my brain of Virgin Atlantic.
Yeah.
And of course, they did not succeed in doing that. And I'm trying to figure out how huge brands, big brands like that, can miss the mark. Do they have the wrong consultants, or do they have? Is their staff not well educated, or is the budget too low? Of course, we don't know the budget, but what is the source of missing the mark, in your opinion? And you're in sales, so that's one thing probably you tell your customers. Listen, you need to budget enough to get to a certain point with your bot. When you start it, you're not there.
Yeah.
It's just the start of a process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think there's often a big disconnect between all the efforts the company's taking in the marketing department and what you're seeing in the bots. And it's not really like a new phenomenon, because there's so often I go onto the website of some renowned company and it's amazing. It's got the best UX and the website looks super modern. Then you go onto another channel, it's the opposite. And it's just the same with going from the website to the telephone. The company's still having an IVR in there that doesn't reflect at all the adventurousness or the quality, conservatism and quality, or whatever we're aiming for. I think it's something that's also getting more and more attention when we talk about having the customer experience across all channels, an omni-channel approach, because you should have, for one, you need the same data available on every channel, but you also need it's the same brand. You should be having the same experience. You should at least say, that was a very lethal experience when I was talking on the telephone, or it was a very, companies take time and effort to make their website uniform, but it's a shame when that doesn't extend to the other channels.
But what do they need to change, or what do they need to do in order to get that right? Because it's such a waste of money
Yeah.
that they're investing in all these channels and they're sort of not connected. How often do we see a chatbot where it doesn't connect to a live agent? And of course, if you come on at night or on a Sunday and there's no agent available, I understand that's not a problem. But they forget to ask me for my email address, my phone number, or another way to contact me to give me that great experience, not today, but maybe tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. What do we need to change, or what do we need to change to?
I think we need to put more customer experience on voice bots and chatbots. Because I think, just from my perspective, whenever any new technology comes out, first, all the techies do their part. And it's up and running and it's cool. And then it seems like it's not until later that people say, well, what's the user journey? What's the first step when the customer comes to the website? And what's the next step? And what would be the logical continuation? I mean, even just looking at, obviously, websites have changed a lot over time. But I think they've gotten a lot more user-centric recently. And I think that's exactly what the voicebot and chatbot world needs. But I think it's kind of natural that they evolved in the way they have, because first the technology sprouts up and people start implementing it, and it's cool, it works, and you can write a blog article about it. But the problem is, if you really want to make a good experience for the customer, you have to have the experienced people on board from the beginning. You have to have the user research on board from the beginning. People doing it's like product management kind of thinking. You need to first know what problem and what pain you're actually trying to solve before you implement the coolest solution. It's an amazing solution, but for the wrong problem.
So that defines the what, but now the how. Because what I totally understand and I agree. I think if you talk about communication or marketing, it should be cross-channel, and there should be one sort of guideline over all the channels. But what you see typically is that a customer service bot or one that should deflect calls is managed by a different department than the communication or the marketing department. And the problem is they're usually so far away from the actual business that they wouldn't even be able to manage it because they have no clue. So how do we get that? One of the things I see that is often missing is a proper ambassadorship or sponsorship on C-level, where they understand we need to address this in the board and give our commitment. That's one of the things I see, but I'm pretty sure there's more operational problems to get this done, or challenges.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the aspects. But when I think about call centers, for example, they also have big representation in C-level and a lot of sway there. And nonetheless, you see a lot of IVRs or even AI-based chatbots or voice bots that are not hitting the mark. And I also kind of wonder there a little bit what maybe the cause is.
Let me turn the question around. If you were C-level in a big corporation and you had all these channels and you were aware of the fact that they're not congruent, or how do you say that?
Sure, yeah. Not equally distributed from the usage, is that what you mean?
Yeah, and they don't give the same user experience as a C-level executive. Would you want to get that information from the customers directly, or get the input from the departments saying, we're not getting the same experience? And how would you get that together? What would your approach be?
What would my approach be to kind of bring the departments together?
Well, to bring the experience, to make it similar across all the channels, because that's one of the fundamental problems. Yeah.
I think it's useful and it's important, especially, just looking at the example of good UX on a website. Designers are very important there. And also artistic people and people who have a sense of the aesthetics. And at the beginning, it wasn't like that. It was way more tech focused, and I already kind of went into it a little bit. But if I were the one deciding, I would think I would take the people who made the great website and said, you know, you guys, why don't you guys look at this? This is your bar of quality. It's right here, but this is the same company, and this is the chatbot. What do you think about this? I think it's important to put people with solid UX experience and into these projects, and not just kind of treat them like the unwanted add-on or you said incongruent channels, and part of that, what you meant it as incongruency in the quality of the experience and the branding that goes into it.
Exactly.
From the C-level perspective, I would say it's it's also about like how important are the different channels. Is WhatsApp really the most important channel for our company, or is it a real player among the channels? I think that plays into it.
Hold on, Brian. That's an interesting one. Because if the channel is bad, it will never become a big channel. So if the customer experience is lousy, then people say it's not an important channel. There's so little people on it. But there's a reason for that. Right?
That's a good point.
And one of the things I've seen is that UX people are really great and have amazing ideas. But the problem is if you try to get in a chatbot, the customer comes and he wants to go and solve their problem. And calling takes too long, so he takes the fastest route, and that should be a chatbot. No waiting lines, etc. And then he has a lousy experience or a great experience. But the UX people try to make it beautiful and add extra stuff on it to make it a sort of, to give it the brand experience. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're in this chatbot and you're here with a purpose as a customer. You want to go from A to B as fast as possible, take as little of my time as possible. Forget the exceptions. There are exceptions, of course. People do not want to chit-chat. They just want to get stuff done. And then if you focus on only UX, you forget that people come in to go from A to B as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And you understand my pain point?
But personally, I see UX in a different light. So maybe what I'm thinking of is more of like CX, but it's not just about the corporate branding and about the aesthetics of it. And I was talking about aesthetics, but it's the product management side of things, I think, that we really need to strengthen, because I think the sexiest part of the chatbot is not how it looks and how it feels, but it's really what benefit you're getting out of it. Like you just
said. Functionality, you mean?
Yeah, and that putting time into researching. I mean, your transcripts, for example, can help you a lot there. You see already the distribution of what people are calling for. That's a great indicator as to what step you should maybe implement first. What should be your first transaction that you're going to implement on a bot. And also doing things like A/B testing, just trying to get as much insights as possible as to, is your prototype working? Can you expand it? Can you then scale it? Are you going to scale something that's creating fascination or frustration?
That's interesting. You talk about scaling and basically scalability. Yeah. That's one of the things chat and voicebots do. They make the company in certain departments more scalable. How scalable is a voicebot compared to a chatbot? Does that work the same, or is that's a different dynamic?
I want to say a voice bot is more scalable, or it's just like by necessity more scalable, because you have to usually choose to interact with a chatbot. It's not like you write an email and first there's a chatbot that answers you in general terms. People are calling IKEA or Lidl or supermarket, whatever, and they are confronted with the voice bot. And that's why I think that's why I really like the voice bot sphere of things, because it just, like I said earlier, it's just kind of like a people's people's version of automation and AI that reaches everyone. I mean, most things, if you're experimenting with ChatGPT, a lot of people have done it by now, or any sort of new technology. There's always early adopters and the laggards, etc. But there's no laggards or early adopters with conversational IVR. Everyone, if the company set it up that way, everyone's going through the conversational IVR, and you're going to have to. You're going to have to try it out whether you want to or not. Although I do not support that kind of mentality, but sometimes it exists, unfortunately.
Well, if you set up a new company and this is the only thing you offer, it's not a problem because that's what people are used to if they buy your service or your product. Yeah. But if you're an established company, you've been around for a long time and you've had all these channels, then it sort of becomes a problem if you force people in one channel and you don't give them space to choose another channel.
I think the motivation is really important. I was talking a little bit earlier about like the psychological side of why should I want to use the bot? And
motivation on the consumer side or the company side?
I would say the consumer side is the most important. Okay. About the motivation. Just at least because in the bot, like I said, you can press 0, you can get out. Unless you've made one of those bots where it's an eternal loop in the bot, which you want to obviously not do in general. Even sometimes thinking about something that's done very, very rarely, but an outbound bot. It's all about the motivation.
Why is it done very rarely than outbound bot? Because voice bot, you mean?
Yeah.
Because I know in France they use them.
What do you know of in France that they use them for?
Well, the company or the lady I interviewed, she explained they developed a bot for an outbound voice bot for medical practice. Mm-hmm. And they had a no-show problem in that practice. Okay. Like a lot of doctors have.
Sure.
And of course, you have all these systems that send a text message, but people don't see it, they don't read it, they forget. And they said everybody is phone or talk oriented in France. So what if instead of the assistant calling all the patients, they don't have time for that. What if we have an outbound voice bot calling these people and asking them to confirm that they will be present at their appointment, and if they're not, we give them the option in the voice bot to reschedule. Yeah. And their no-show percentage went down to almost 0. And people enjoy it. And it's transactional because if you can't come, you inform, no, I won't be there. Okay, no problem. Let's reschedule. So it's also sort of, if you look at it from a commercial perspective, it's not a customer lost, it's a customer moved.
Yeah. And it's also a nice service to have a reminder that you have your doctor's appointment. I'm sure there's plenty of people who wouldn't have otherwise come that,
all these systems send an SMS, most of them, because it's privacy, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But here the voice bot actually calls these people, calls their numbers, and if they can reach them, they have hardly any or almost 0 no-show, which is a tremendous gain from where they came from.
Sure. And it's so much, I mean, I was writing a little text about some television remote control that we worked on, and
to talk to your television remote control
for television. But anyway, I was just thinking about it because if you get an SMS, then you have to answer back. You got to type some stuff into your keyboard, and it's just annoying. And I type a lot on my phone, but my dad, for example, is 76. He always uses the dictation function because it's just too annoying for his fingers to type in everything. And I think it shouldn't be underestimated how much of a benefit it is just to use your voice. It really is the most natural channel. It's
interesting that you say that. I talked also a couple of times about inclusivity in chatbots, and I don't want to make it very complicated or politically correct or incorrect. That's not what this is about. But if you have a chatbot and you are a company, you have a customer base from young to old, from literate to almost illiterate. From people who can properly read to people who have very bad eyes or almost blind or deaf or whatever. You have all these people that have to buy your service, like electricity or energy supply in general, or telephone. And I'm surprised that, and I'm guilty of it as well, right? I'm not holy. but that none of the chatbots we see are actually inclusive. You don't have the choice. It's text or voice, or I want to talk to the bot, but I wanted to type back. So that all these combinations, which we both know they're technically possible. It's not that hard. Well, it's complicated, but not that hard. But it's not happening. And I would assume that a lot of the conversation, it's relevant that I would have the conversation in my email so they can read it back.
Yeah.
Very few do that. Some of them do that. You can enter an email address and it will send you a transcript. But what I find is that we should have inclusivity, not to be politically correct, but to include all your customers by design. And I'm not seeing it. And it's very hard to convince companies to invest basically a lot more to do both, or to serve everybody.
Yeah. When you're looking at websites, for example, there's a whole ISO scale about accessibility and your color
letter
contrast
size
and all sorts of contrasts, et cetera. Yeah.
Read it to me. You have all that.
Say again.
You have a button on the website where you can have the text
read it to
read.
me. Yeah, exactly. So
with voice,
there things are going in that direction. It's I was speaking to a woman from the call center, Verband, the German Call Center Association, and she's actually their head of inclusion there, and she was telling me when she's speaking to a human on the phone, she can say, wait, slow down a little bit. She's blind. She's partially blind. And she's very focused on the auditive channel, obviously. But I found that very interesting that this wasn't particularly related to her seeing ability, but just why shouldn't you be able to slow it down, play it back, repeat what was just said, say it in a different way? A lot of websites, like you said, they have a read it back function, or some of them even have this easy language. I'm not sure what the English term is exactly, but simplified language for people who have some sort of reading impediment. Definitely thoughts that should be more active in the voice sphere.
But voice,
unfortunately, a lot of companies are so much at the beginning that they're saying, okay, well, first of all, we have to get something up and running. That's the Cadillac class, but it definitely shouldn't. You should have your inclusion in all of your classes, not just the Cadillac.
Yeah, that. But also, if you start with one, you usually have you probably make the wrong choice in tech, because you're so focused on either text or voice. Then it will have its weight on that. And if you want to do both, it probably requires different text explain.
Yeah, sure. So, I went searching for a chatbot that kind of gave me a little bit of that spawned some inspiration and some thoughts in my mind, and I thought this was pretty interesting. So it's Plantix, that's right, yeah. Plantix, and basically you can use it as a farmer to scan your crops, and you can get back a AI generated report as to whether or not it's infected with parasites and what exactly these parasites might be. That's basically my understanding of it. And I'm not an expert on plants or plant diseases. And Dorian, I'm very grateful to you that you've already gone through here, and we'll see some examples shortly. But I think it's just really great to see conversational AI in a use case, in the sense of this is a really practical use, and it's kind of going towards what I was talking about a moment ago. We need people who come from these spheres of agriculture, for example, to say, what are the agricultural pain points that you can apply conversational AI to? And having some sort of tool like this that's also multimodal, that you can have multiple types of inputs, you can put a picture in there, you can talk with it, you can write with it, or I don't think you can just write with it. But I think it's a great use case, and that's why I wanted to dive into it a little bit with you. Yeah,
I fully agree. And I tried it walking in the park, and it does not scan non-commercial crop. I tried that.
Okay.
So what I did was I have some. Let's ask it something.
Sure.
How can you help me? And when I started when I started the first one, the first time this app or this chatbot, it asked me which language I wanted to talk in. That disappeared. I chose English. So
yeah, that's a nice feature.
It's nice and important, and it had like 6 or 7 languages, so quite impressive. So I need to upload an image of a plant here. So I have. I'm gonna try one, and let's see what it says.
Now, does that look healthy or unhealthy to you?
That's unhealthy.
Okay. Maybe there's a
I'm
new,
an expert,
new leaf.
but here you see what it does. It compares to pictures in its database.
Yeah.
So they have image recognition behind it. So they must use some API. So I need to answer yes or no. I think it looks similar.
Sure.
And what it shows now is a picture. I forgot to say, it showed a picture from their database that do you think the image that I sent to you is similar to yours? Then I had to answer with yes or no. And it came with an answer, and it says it's peach leaf curl, the disease that is in the plant. And then I can click on the Plantix link to get more information about it, which I'm not going to do right now.
Yeah.
Let me try another picture.
Yeah. So, to my understanding, I mean, they started with the database, and that's the whole core of the software. But
so here I uploaded a picture of a leaf of an apple tree. And it says, it seems your apple is infected with, and that correct nose of apple, some disease. And then it shows me a picture. This is how anthracnose of apple looks normally. I think it's very similar to your image. Just click the link above for all the information you might need. So you get more information about the disease. So it's actually quite accurate.
Yeah.
In terms of recognition. But these are commercial crops, we have to understand.
Yeah. Doran, one thing I didn't find out yet was what I just said a second ago, whether that's not true. So did you find out whether or not they created this primarily as a database in its own right, correct? And then they said, let's add a chatbot on top of it. Or did they start with the chatbot from the beginning? I'm wondering.
I don't know. I couldn't trace that back. But what I do see is that I think the way they build it's actually really simple and straightforward. You add a picture and they give feedback.
Sure.
And if it doesn't recognize the picture, let me see if I can put a picture it doesn't recognize. They sort of build up a database with a lot of diseases, plant diseases, and use AI to scan the pictures we put in and compare them with what's in the database. Basically, what the same they do with radiology. Yeah. And then they say, we know it or we don't know it, or we have something that looks similar. I would assume they have some sort of algorithm behind it that calculates the percentage.
Confidence rate.
Compares it, exactly
like
the confidence percentage. And it has to be somewhere 85% or 90% or up. And then they tell you, this is the most similar I know.
Yeah.
So and every time I say yes, we're training their database, their model.
Right.
I presume, or no.
I would also presume.
So let's say yes. Let's see what happens. We say it looks similar. And then it's great. We identified the problem, grape, blister, mite. I have no idea what that is. But let's see if I can change the language.
Oh, that's a good point.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Then it answers me, hi, Doron, good to see you again. I was never gone. If you like, please don't hesitate to upload the next image I should analyze. I can't go back to the start of the menu, apparently.
Yeah. So I was about to to praise this for being a really good example of a straight, quick and dirty kind, or not quick and dirty, but to the point. It has its one concrete use, and it does it well.
Single purpose.
Single purpose, yeah. It is a bit of a shame that there's not a little bit, at least a minimum of navigation possibility in here. Although, what else would you think of, Doron, to ask it besides the language? I mean, I can think of a couple other things, like follow-up questions will obviously be a cool model. But I think also going out by the 80-20 principle, it delivers a lot of value in a very convenient format.
I agree. I would like to ask them, so let's say I see a grape blister mite, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So I would want to know if I can order supplies. I wouldn't say toxic stuff.
Right.
Because I would assume, it's a grape. This is so funny. So I asked it, can I order supplies in this chatbot? And it says, I'm really not that good in conversation, but pretty awesome in analyzing images of plants. It's actually pretty good.
Okay, so it's
Why
kind
don't
of
you
like
give it a try and upload one here?
Yeah.
Sorry?
I was just going to say it's a very to the point interface for sure.
Well, it gets me from A to B really quick. And I think they're just at the beginning of this, because what I miss here is conversational commerce.
That's a good point.
So you have grape blister mite. Great. These are the remedies, or this is what you can spray on or put on the ground. I don't know what the remedy is.
Yeah.
Do you want to order it?
Doran, could you upload one more picture or
Sure.
one of the older pictures? Because I don't think it's going to work, but maybe we'll be surprised. It says, I think the problem is whatever it is.
Here we go.
Even so what should I do? I don't know, next steps kind of question. That I understand they give you the link, you can click on it and see the whole history of, or the whole scheme of what it consists of, etc. But okay, so it's EXA is the problem. Is that right?
This is interesting. It says here, please click the link above to get information how to control it.
Okay, so that's kind of semantically the end of the conversation.
They want you to go to the website.
Yeah.
And that I don't understand. They have me here. This is one channel. Why don't you keep me on the channel?
So maybe, what if you type in, what can I use against it or something?
To solve this.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Oh, hold on. If I was helpful, please feel free to save this number as Plantix Crop Doctor in your contacts and share it with every farmer you know on WhatsApp.
It's a shame this doesn't. Did you try down any plants in your apartment or in your house?
I tried plants from the park, and it says even a decorative apple tree.
Yeah.
And it says it didn't recognize. It's not in the database because it's not commercial.
Maybe
crop.
there's already something like this, but I know it would be useful on my balcony because I have so many plants that are turning brown.
Let me see what happens here.
Although it's probably going to tell me for everyone, just water them more.
No, it actually says, I don't know, this is something, we already did that one.
Apple, yeah.
Sorry.
But I think it's just, it makes it very accessible to try it out. It's just a bit of a shame that it's not available for more plants.
Well, that's, you mean for houseplants, for people
For
at home?
houseplants, yeah. I mean, I could see them getting a little bit more reach or influence.
I'm sorry, but I'm not sure, and I don't want to tell you anything that is not correct. This is very good. It doesn't, the database, or their model doesn't recognize this one.
Yeah.
Although it's it's from a grapevine, and it should recognize it. So please try again with another image. And it doesn't have anything that's closely related to it.
Yeah, but it's definitely good to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, so I think, but it doesn't respond to text. Basically, you add a picture, and if you want to converse with it, then it sort of says, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's it's actually quite useful if you're a farmer.
Yeah.
But I would, to be honest, if you're a farmer and you have only apples or only grapes, I would assume you've seen every disease around,
Yeah. That's the other side of the coin. That's why I was thinking a little bit about the house plants, because there's so many people who have no idea there, whereas farmers, like you said, they tend to know their stuff.
That's actually yeah, but then you should add like a humidity sensor or something in the soil, and then add that to it, and then it tells you what to do.
Yeah,
If it's more water or less water, or actually, now that we're thinking of it, what if you would make you would make this for houseplants, and you would put in every pot you would put a sensor which communicates via Bluetooth. And uses that as input in this app or in WhatsApp.
That would be cool.
And then you get outbound messages. You need to water plant number 2.
Yeah. I bought some electric plant sensors one time, and they were not Bluetooth. I thought about trying to connect them with some Arduinos and stuff. But anyway, they beeped when the plant needed water. And long story short, my balcony was beeping all the time, and it was very annoying. And I couldn't figure out which plant was beeping.
So what if you would, with Wi-Fi speakers in your house, right?
Yeah.
You can connect them, disconnect them. What if, or lights? You have all these apps where you can do that. Why not for watering your plants?
Yeah,
So
it's a great idea.
I think a lot of people kill their plants.
Definitely.
With either too much or too little water, or too much or too little sunshine.
You could have a whole plant dashboard in your phone.
I think we've just solved the problem and invented a new product.
That's right.
But I don't think Plantix is going to do it because they're very commercial towards farmers, and this is not a farmer solution. But if you would have like a garden center or something, or a brand for a garden center, that actually would be amazing add-on to help me as a consumer.
Sure.
Or you connect it to your watering system in your garden.
That's the next step.
And it knows which plant to water. I mean, commercially they do that already, right?
Say again?
Commercially,
commercially definitely
in
already
glass
exists.
houses they already do that. They use drones and everything.
Yeah, there is some sort of magic box you can buy that has a lamp in it, a special like sunlight lamp, and a watering system. It's just about this big. I don't know. It's like, because I was looking into this recently. There's some creative people out there thinking about creative problems, but it's a very common problem.
Yeah. So what do you think? We should test this more, or we're going to get the same?
I think we're just going to get more of the same.
Okay.
But I think it's nice to have shown it, because this kind of app definitely also has its place. Sometimes you just need a simple dialogue to enable a lot of functionality.
This is what I meant before, is where you, if you would have a UX designer look at this, they would go mad.
That's true.
Right? They would say, "Oh, you can't do it like this," blah blah blah, or even.
Okay, that's very true. Yeah.
But here they're only about, and they say that even, you know, you upload a picture and we'll tell you what it is. Mm-hmm. If we don't know what it is, we'll tell you we don't know. It's extremely functional.
Yeah.
So I'm not negative, certainly not negative about this chatbot. I missed the commercial part. We should be able to go back to a previous menu where I made a choice. Oh, I chose the wrong language. Can I change the language? I can't. So those are a few points that leave some space for improvement. But it's impossible to do chit-chat with this chatbot. It doesn't give you any space. It's very functional, and farmers don't have time for bullshit, so they just take a picture and want to know what is it. And
it's a very matter of fact.
Yeah, and then they get the disease, and then they can apparently do something or order maybe a solution. I would put that in the chatbot, but maybe for security reasons, or they don't put it in there. I don't know. But yeah, there's. I'm actually quite happy with the way they made it functionally. I mean, we can discuss the design, but that's about it. You agree?
I agree. I think the functional user experience is really good.
Yeah, but I don't think a farmer cares if it looks beautiful. Not saying anything about farmers with that. They just don't have the time for. Their crop is sick. They need to act now.
Yeah, and they can just take it out of their pocket
Yeah.
take a photo, and it's done.
And they don't have to hire a tree doctor or someone.
Right.
come
And
in.
I'm sure there's some more rare sicknesses that are also recognized by that, but I'm sure it's not just like, the little brown spots that maybe everyone's seen before.
I just Googled for sick fruit trees.
Yeah.
So, and then I get these leaves,
Yeah.
pictures of leaves. Okay, we'll stop sharing. Well, so we can conclude that there was actually a job well done by them.
I think so.
Yeah, and there's room for improvement, but considering they're probably in the early stages, I wouldn't be surprised to see in a year's time that they add some other interesting features that and make a bigger database. Because I would assume these are like plants that are crops that are very common. There's of course there's more than 50 crops around the world, and these are probably the main crops. But if you would have to give advice to people starting, conversation designers, helping customers with designing and building voice bots, and at the same for C-level people thinking about implementing a voice bot or standing before the choice voice bot or text-based, what would your advice be for either of them, or your tips?
I am going to start with the C level, and I would say my advice would be exploit all of the knowledge that you already have as much as you can before you get started. And that would mean primarily, if you have whatever customer interactions you have, try and find out in a quantitative way what's the most important and get things prioritized. And then you can go into the
emails or recording.
Yeah, you could even use emails. Sure. I mean, it depends if it's going to be a voice bot or a chat bot and what you're going to use it for. But I was thinking about the chat call center transcripts, for example. But just learn more about your users and make educated hypotheses about what is going to bring them the most value, and build your voice bot in such a way that it's going to be generating value for your user.
That makes sense.
That would be the C-level recommendation.
And
can't go wrong with that, right?
No. That's an easy one. But how do you measure the value? Or that specific
I would say in the
value?
voice bot, the measures that we most typically use, and I think it's the most obvious one, is the hang-up rate and the resolution rate. You can also use things like NPS and CSAT.
I don't believe in NPS for bots.
I think the hard number at the end of the day is, are people actually using it or are they not using it? And are they getting to their goal? We got to our goal with Plantix pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think that has to be the final KPI.
So if you talk about resolution rate, that should be the one of the key indicators.
For sure.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. That's for C-level. And now for conversation designers
for aspiring conversational designers, was that?
Or conversation designers who are already busy in the text realm, and now looking at voice, or people who are just starting as a conversation designer.
Okay. What would I tell them about voice?
What are if you look at the biggest mistakes you've made, of course you've made them like everybody else, there's no exception. What are the hurdles they could sort of go around instead of having to take them?
This doesn't directly go to the pure conversation designer, but when you're talking about designing the whole system with your natural language understanding and your dialogues and everything altogether, I think sometimes the easiest solution can be the best solution, in the sense of there's often, like, for example, looking into the statistics of the calls beforehand or something, there's often simple tools that can give you a lot of bang for the buck. And maybe this digresses a little bit from conversation designers, but I think in natural language understanding for bots, it should, taking the business perspective into context, I think shouldn't be underestimated how much an AI chatbot is also partly rule-based, and that you can often get a lot of bang for your buck by implementing a smart rule as opposed to sending everything to an artificial intelligence. That's not really directly for conversation designers, but
No, actually, it is. It is because I think a lot of companies use AI to only AI to answer questions, and very often they're off. It's uncontrollable. It is a risk. And if you use partly rule-based or fully rule-based, you have de-risked the project, and you're able to help your customers properly. And my opinion is that only if you have established a rule-based or partly rule-based chatbot where you have an excellent customer experience, where you get them from A to B as fast as possible, then you introduce the AI part, because you have the customer already there. He has a great experience. Slowly you can add AI layers and be honest about it. Tell them, it's like, we're trying something new. Could be annoying, but just tell us, and we're trying to improve. Then people know it can deliver great value. Then they won't go to another channel as fast. But if you start with AI and it's wrong, it's off, then you've basically chased them away. That's my opinion.
And I think also just looking at the distribution of what people are saying. For one, it's you always need to know what are the most common cases, what's happening, what are your surprises, where you need to make the hockey stick flatten out a little bit. But there's often a lot of cases that are just repetitive, easy stuff. Maybe you don't need to put in AI, and maybe you can focus on the AI for the creme de la creme. Or
put in a simple button, because that is what they want. Just have them. That's really going from A to B really fast. Okay, these are the options. And then if you know that 90% chooses that, just make a button and skip the rest. And as a conversation designer, that might be frustrating because you want to design a conversation, but it should be about having the customer having a great experience. And you should take pride in, that's my opinion, going from A to B, or helping the customer from A to B ASAP.
I completely agree. Don't fall in love with the solution. Fall in love with the
customer. Conversational
problem.
Yeah, and fall in love with the customer and his or her needs. As my one of my previous guests, Mahmoud Mahran, said, he said, be the customer first. That meaning you have to stand in the shoes of the customer to be able to properly design a conversation, and then you won't resort into the fancy schmancy things. You just you understand it needs to be extremely functional, but like this one we just tested. And then the beautiful stuff, maybe it's not necessary. It's a waste of time and money, and just make customers happy. On that note, I think that's a good way to end our podcast. Make the customer happy, right? That's what we're all about.
That's right. That's our goal.
Exactly. Brian, I want to thank you for being here, for participating, and sharing your knowledge. And
my pleasure.
And we'll be in touch and see how this develops, the voice world.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much.